Thors was one of the mightiest warriors in the Jomsgard army. But after starting a family, he realized the mistakes of war. He faked his death and put down his sword to become a great father and protector of his family. After living peacefully for 15 years, his past finally catches up with him, and he's forced by Floki, leader of his former soldiers, to re-enter the front lines. Fleeing isn't an option this time, as his village would be destroyed. However, Floki wasn't very truthful in his demands. He hires mercenary leader Askeladd to kill Thors instead to pay for his war crimes 15 years ago, unbeknownst to Thors, and our story continues. Askeladd and Floki resume their conversation about killing Thors. Askeladd asks if Floki is sure about this order, since Thors is considered a hero to their men. Floki confirms that heroes don't abandon their soldiers, and this order has existed for 15 years since Thors' departure. Askeladd tries to say that 15 years is a long time, but he certainly won't refuse a well-paying job, before demanding double the gold from Floki, from £5 to 10. After his demands, one of Askeladd's men accidentally throws a spear into the meeting room, breaking the tension. Floki agrees to the sum, and the meeting concludes. Askeladd discards the remaining wine and tells his troops to get a move on, before complimenting Bjorn on his earlier throw, saying it scared Floki into accepting. It's then we learn that this throw was no accident, as it killed a soldier of Floki's attempting to ambush Askeladd. The young men of Thors' village prepare to set sail to the battlefield. Ari, an optimistic young fellow, is giving a farewell speech to Ylva, presumably to win her heart. Ylva isn't remotely interested and says she's still tired from waking up. After his mother brings him the lunch he forgot, he embarrassingly walks away, while several other young men approach Ylva to win her just like Ari did. The naive, excited men are saying their farewells, but the villagers are wondering why Thors only chose to bring 5 men with him. 5 men is barely enough to sail the boats. Fighting over Ylva, 2 of the men are interrupted by a young girl who says her goodbyes to Ari. Leif notices that she's concerned about their safety, and lets her in on a secret. Thors will make sure that these men never make it to the battlefield. Concerned for their lives, Thors plans to make a stop halfway to the destination, and find new sailors to leave them behind with Leif, so Leif can bring them home. He refuses to have any of his young men experience the horrors of the battlefield, and will fight alone instead. Thors is calling for Thorfinn. Due to their argument the night before, his 6-year-old son is refusing to say goodbye to him. Ready to sail, 5 men operate one side of the rowing, while Thors handles the other side with a massive oar, sailing with the strength of 5 men alone. Thors calls out to his wife Helga, and asks to pass on a message to Thorfinn. Although he can't get his words out, his wife understands what he means and confirms she'll tell him. The men set sail, and the younger ones can't believe Thors' strength. The sail goes up, and the young men are completely exhausted, complaining about their hands and ass while one is throwing up. Thors comforts them, saying they don't need to row anymore, and one voice shouts out, "So there's no going back now, right?" Thors agrees, before realizing the voice wasn't one of the young men. Inside the barrel, Thorfinn jumps out, and Thors can't believe his eyes. Thorfinn runs to pee immediately, and while Thors tries to scold Thorfinn for his actions, he can't help but smile at his enthusiasm of being out at sea. Askeladd warns his right-hand man, Bjorn, that Floki is hiding many secrets about this job. Why wouldn't Floki kill Thors in his village if he had orders to? Why hire mercenaries? Askeladd believes that Floki is acting out of his own will and the orders likely don't exist. He also uses this information to realize that Floki is likely scared of Thors, assuming he would lose many men trying to kill Thors, or perhaps even all of them, and would be severely punished by his higher-ups. An entire Jomsviking unit to one man? Bjorn doesn't remotely believe it, but Askeladd just smiles and exclaims he's very excited to meet this famous Thors the Troll. The evening sets in, and Leif informs Thors that the wind has changed slightly, and they must alter their sails. Ari is amazed that Leif can sail the pitch-black sea without getting lost. Staring into the sea, Thors warns Ari not to, as it will eventually pull him in. Ari asks Thors for some stories of the battlefield, knowing he's been in many wars, before expressing how he wants to cut off a general's head and become a real man. Thors replies how his daughter does indeed like strong men, exposing the true intentions of Ari's question. He asks Ari if he loves Ylva, and he responds he does. Thors explains that when Ylva was born, he was still a part of the Jomsvikings. Thors had no real attachment to the baby at this point, and told Helga to bear him a son next time instead. Upon being summoned, Helga tells Thors to name the child before leaving. He refuses, stating he's busy, and Helga stops him again and asserts that he will name the baby before he leaves, the only time in 15 years he's seen her angry. Thors realizes it was that day he came to the conclusion that he no longer wanted to be a warrior. Ari was not expecting such an answer, and they're interrupted by Leif stating he can see their destination. Seagulls surround the ship as the crew are all awake. Leif explains there's a village in between the canyon where they can rest, trade, and get some water. Thors orders the men to prepare to row, and they reluctantly agree. Upon setting his eyes on the destination, Leif suddenly stops drumming. Something is wrong. There's way less houses than the last time he came here. Thors notices the terrain above is suspicious, and orders the boats to turn back around. Up above we see Thors was correct. Men are waiting above to ambush them. They didn't want to damage the boats, but have no choice but to spring the trap early. Using the wood from the houses they destroyed, they barricade the entrance and trap both the boats in the canyon. Thors confirms everyone is okay, and orders them to shield their heads from arrows. The men who sprung the trap are closing in on them, and Askeladd is at the front of the ship eagerly smiling. The men assume they're pirates and consider surrendering, but Ari explains they would be sold as slaves. They may be scared, but they're ready to fight. Thors stops Ari, explaining that these men are experienced and they stand no chance. Thors pats Thorfinn, takes a deep breath, and takes out some weapons. He reluctantly passes Thorfinn the dagger he stared at the night before, and says to only use it in an absolute emergency. Ari asks if Thors is going to kill, and says he will help, but Thors explains to never speak about killing people so lightly. On the other ship, Bjorn eats some sort of mushroom and counts the number of men they have. Disappointed at the low numbers, he asks Askeladd if he can try taking them alone, since they outnumber them anyway. But Askeladd says it looks like Thors has the same idea, as he leaps onto their boat alone. One by one, Thors begins knocking the men out without a weapon, impressing Askeladd. Thors's men watch in disbelief as he single-handedly takes on all these men with nothing but his fists, and even Bjorn is shocked while Askeladd is happy he's living up to his reputation. Bjorn's mushroom starts taking effect, and he begins to rampage, taking out his own men while Thors watches. Thors is aware of the mushroom, and the two monsters prepare to battle it out. Bjorn withstands one of his punches, but is still no match for Thors. The men are gobsmacked at Thors's power. However, Bjorn returns to his feet. Back at the ship and severely outnumbered, Ari would rather die than become a slave. Askeladd says to not damage them too much as they would sell for less, and as they prepare to board the ship, Bjorn comes flying over to break one of the planks. Thors leaps back over, and Thorfinn is ecstatic to see his father in such a heroic state. Breaking the other plank with his sword, he informs the attackers that they have already lost half of their forces, and urges a peaceful surrender. He informs the pirates that they cannot defeat him, and the archers are wondering why they haven't received the signal to fire yet. Leif is mesmerized at Thors taking on 2 warships alone, and informs the men that they would simply hinder Thors if they tried to help. Thors assesses the situation. The archers haven't fired yet, and the 30 men in front of him he could easily take alone. However, if they boarded as he was fighting, his young men would likely be killed in the battle, including his son. He points Askeladd out as their leader, and challenges him to a 1v1. Win, and you can do whatever you want. Lose, and you withdraw immediately. Askeladd realizes the duel is probably a wise choice, and asks Thors what makes him think he's their leader, and Thors replies it's his scent. Askeladd leaps over, accepting the challenge, and says Thors smells a lot like himself, before referring to him as Thors the Troll. Thors now realizes that these men aren't pirates, and Floki must have sent them to kill him. Thorfinn shouts at Askeladd, saying he is nothing like his father, and saying his armor looks stupid. Thors asks if Askeladd has a family, and after he responds no, they prepare for the duel. Thors approaches, and Askeladd cuts the sails and uses the brief moment to surprise Thors, slicing his chest. Thors is quick to react, and the wound is too shallow. Askeladd acknowledges Thors' strength, and Thors is sad to learn that Askeladd is strong too, because it means he unfortunately cannot hold back on him. Askeladd appreciates the compliment. Thors rushes in, striking Askeladd's sword many times. The latter's men are shocked to see Askeladd on the defensive. However, Askeladd is doing a good job guarding. None of the spectators understand what's happening. Thors is aiming for Askeladd's sword, attempting to break it instead of killing him. Askeladd realizes this, and knows the damage goes both ways. Knowing Thors' plan, Askeladd breaks his sword and goes for the fatal swing. Unfortunately for him, this was all part of Thors' plan, as he counters the swing by targeting his arm and disarming him from his weapon. Grabbing Askeladd's sword, he wrests it by his neck, and Thors is the winner. Askeladd fell for the trap. Thors pleads for Askeladd's surrender, refusing to kill the man. The latter informs Thors that surrendering in front of his men is not an option, and unless Thors kills him the duel will not end. Bjorn awakes from his nap to see Askeladd at the mercy of Thors. Askeladd praises Thors' strength, and wonders why he hid in Iceland for 15 years, asking if Thors doesn't think he's wasting his talents there. Thors quickly responds no, saying he believes a true warrior doesn't need a weapon, confusing Thorfinn greatly. Askeladd throws a curveball, and says that Thors should lead him and his men instead. With everyone shocked, Askeladd breaks the awkward silence by saying he was simply joking, but Bjorn is angered, saying this is no time for jokes, before taking Thorfinn hostage. Thors tells Askeladd to stop this, but Askeladd laughs, asking if Thors seriously believed he would honor the rules of the duel. Putting the sword back to Askeladd's neck, he reminds everyone that he won the duel, but instead throws the sword into the sea. Askeladd acknowledges Thors as the winner of the duel, before giving the signal to fire on Thors immediately. The archers open fire, and multiple arrows penetrate Thors as he stands there wounded. Thors is content with this, assuming Askeladd releases the rest of his men. With his job of killing Thors completed, Askeladd agrees to his terms and withdraws his men, and Thors tells Leif to take his head to the leader of the Jomsvikings to keep the village safe, as they may assume he deserted again. His men cry at the events of Thors defeated, and despite being severely wounded, he orders the release of his child, which Bjorn fearfully abides by. Thorfinn immediately runs to his father and cries, easing the pain Thors is experiencing. Enraged, Ari rushes Askeladd, who makes quick work of him and warns him not to throw away his life, which Thors has gracefully sacrificed himself for. Thorfinn lives his final moments with his father. We're cut to a scene of Thorfinn crying in a dark area, questioning the actions of his father. How can a great warrior not need a sword, he wonders. His rage boils, saying his father should not have been the one who died. We learn that Thors' men gave their worship to Askeladd, since they couldn't row it home without Thors anyway. Suddenly, on that worship, Thorfinn appears. Askeladd is reminiscing, and was confused when he learned that out of the 28 men defeated, Thors didn't kill a single one. Summoned by his men, Askeladd walks up to see Thorfinn on the other ship. Thorfinn tells the men that he will kill them all, and they all mock him while Askeladd watches in silence. Thorfinn shouts repeatedly how he will kill every man on the boat, silencing the men with the look in his eyes. Asking if they should throw him overboard, Askeladd says he'll die on the boat anyway and should be left alone. That's all for this one, Kings. Subscribe in memory of the mightiest warrior, Thors. Thorfinn now becomes the main protagonist, and we watch his journey from boy to man. If that sounds interesting to you, then I'll see you in the next one.